Councilman and Mr. Mayor.
Thank you all very much. Next on our agenda is something that has been in the works for quite some time, and a ton of public input from this community, shepherded by MKSK and Councilman Lindley and the committee, many of whom are here and have spent a lot of their time volunteering in this effort. This is a presentation of the Smyrna Downtown Development Plan by MKSK, who is the urban planning and design architecture firm who has done a fantastic job with this process, and I think you all will like the high-level concept that they have come up with based on the input that you've provided. So come on up.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. It is a pleasure to be with you all tonight and present this vision for the First Baptist Church site. For today, what I will do is I'll just talk a little bit about the planning process, then give you an overview of the great engagement that we had throughout with the community. Then I'll go into the vision for the site, walk us through the different components of how we are reimagining this fantastic portion of downtown. And then as I share the site, I'll pause and I'll give you some of the feedback that we received from the community when we shared this vision at the third public meeting. I'll also end with talking a little bit about implementation and about how to translate this vision, this concept, into a real development project that you all can take following the adoption of this plan, hopefully tonight. So first, a little bit about the process. We've been working with city staff, with the community for the last year on this. We divided this into 3 phases of work. In the first phase, what we call initiate, we asked big questions to the community. What do you want from downtown? How do you see this site integrating with the rest of downtown? What does it mean to redevelop? We talked with stakeholders. We mobilized our plan ambassadors. We held our first community meeting. Then, as we moved to a second phase, we took all of this feedback and we developed alternatives. And those alternatives were different ways to reimagine the site, and we tested those with the community at a second community meeting. Then we took all of that feedback and we went to a third phase of work where we synthesized it into one preferred concept that summarized everything we heard from the community, but also what we found through our own research with market conditions and then understanding mobility implications. All of this is summarized in very succinct 100-page document that is available on the project website right now. It includes all of the visuals and the materials that I'll walk through us tonight, but it has accompanying narrative, it has a full implementation chapter, and it has so much more information that you all can peruse as well, and is available for the community as we take this plan forward. The plan is very graphic. All of the graphics that I'll show have additional information in this report. It goes into greater detail on the types of things that I'll discuss at a higher level today. And I think one of the main things about this plan, and honestly one of the joys in working through this process, has been the engagement process and the great reception that we've had from the community. We held 3 community meetings, all at the community center. The first meeting alone had 250 people. We had about 200 at the second community meeting, and 150 at the third community meeting. We also had a project website, Downtown Smyrna Redevelopment. Over the life of that website, we had about 13,000 unique visitors who visited the website about 20,000 times. We also interviewed roundtables with stakeholders. We had about 70 stakeholders that we had 15 focus group meetings with. We did 2 online surveys, which had about 3,200, almost 3,300 responses. The first survey alone had 2,000 responses. These are huge numbers for online engagement. One of my favorite parts of this process, we had 20 project ambassadors. These are dedicated folks from the community who volunteered their time to go to community events, attend our public meetings, staff the sign-in sheets, and really, become champions for the process. Some of these folks are here today as well, and it has been a real joy working with them as this process. With the help of ambassadors, we attended the Taste of Smyrna and the Jonquil Festival, and we had about 300 or so folks that we chatted with. So about 17,000 voices engaged in about a year of work. So really fantastic things. Some of the engagement that I'll share today will be focused on the feedback we received at the third community meeting in mid-November, where we shared this vision for the site, and we had folks tell us what they thought, what they liked, what they didn't like, and I'll share some of the results from this last meeting. So I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the vision for the site. So as we all know, the First Baptist Church site, this is a fantastic redevelopment opportunity for the city. It's really a once-in-a-generational opportunity for you all to double the size of downtown. Very rarely does this type of contiguous land right next to your walkable core come up for redevelopment, and very few times do you have the opportunity to purchase this and then to shape how it continues to grow. As we think through the redevelopment, one of the things that drew us the most to the site was the historic chapel. As part of your purchase agreement, this chapel is to be preserved and reused as a public use. We think the chapel is the heart of any future redevelopment. It has been part of the community for more than 100 years, and it is something that really becomes the focus of any future redevelopment for the site. It's what brings it its authenticity and will ground it and help anchor this district. We think there's an opportunity to do an expansion to the site that still honors that historic architecture. I'll share a little bit about how that can be placed, but really showcase and open up the chapel from what is currently a hidden back side into a future green space. The other organizing element for this vision relies around connectivity. One of the things that people told us through this process is that they do not want to see an old downtown and a new downtown. They wanted everything to feel part of a single experience. And for that, we are proposing what we're calling the Jonquil Mile, but can really be shaped later after this process into any nomenclature. The point here is a really high quality trail that is beyond a path. It is a linear green that connects the Market Village, your village green, to the rest of the site. And it is something that can become more than a trail itself. Not unlike the Beltline nearby, but kind of similar to some of my favorite trail examples, the Cultural Trail and the Monon Greenway in Indiana, where they use unique branding, lighting, wayfinding, sculpture, public art. It all comes together to become a destination in and of itself. We think there's a great opportunity to make this type of investment in the public realm in downtown to help connect the Market Village to the site. And the reason that this is important is because as we think through redevelopment of the site, for us and for the community, it became crucial for this to be a vibrant, walkable extension of downtown. And we know as urban planners, as folks involved in redevelopment, that vibrancy really starts at the ground level. This is where we experience walkability, and this is where you all, as a city, have control. You can set the stage with great streets, great open spaces, great squares, parks, and really set the tone for the redevelopment, whether your investment's in place through the Jonquil Mile. What this signifies to the development community is that you have a high-quality public realm that needs to be matched with a high-quality development. And that vibrancy doesn't end at the sidewalk. That really only sets the tone. However, the vibrancy is really crucial at the ground level. And this is where you can influence the future development. You want a well-designed ground level that has a great mix of uses, has good urban design, so you have something interesting to walk to that encourages meandering. And you have to work with a development community, have a solid tenant mix that really brings in the types of businesses that, one, the community told us that they like to see, but two, businesses that you all know will contribute to what's already here in your Market Village, where you have great collection of longstanding businesses. And to make that happen, what happens above the ground level is really crucial. What the development that occurs there, whether it's residential, office, hospitality, all of that can be influenced by you all, but will be shaped by the market and by the development market. And what happens there will allow for that ground level to occur in a way that you all wanted, in the way that the community told us that they'd like to see, which is more restaurants, more retail, and more local businesses. And we know that to get to this, you have to have a little bit of market flexibility. And that, because people told us that they want certain things, and they expect certain high-quality things from this development, especially after a process like this. We heard from the community, the number one thing they'd like to see, more restaurants, more retail, making downtown a destination, bring in high-quality dining, more things to do downtown. How do you make this work? It really is by bringing residents and housing to the site to support some of that redevelopment, make it feasible from a development perspective, have an appropriate amount of parking and a well-connected downtown, making sure that people can conveniently park here. It doesn't have to become a parking district, but it has to be convenient and easy and intuitive. And then to support the redevelopment, think through other complementary uses like hospitality or office that will support those businesses during lunchtime or during slower times when residential or visitors don't support it. And this is at the back of our head as we think through all of the designs. And some of the things that we use to organize how we think through the site is what we call our framework. And it's really how we organize downtown and how we think through how to place a redevelopment vision. So just to orient folks to the graphic on the screen, you have King Street kind of moving north-south and West Spring Street through your Market Village. On the upper left, you see the community center and the library, and then on the lower right, you see the historic chapel. One of the key things here is the key corridors that anchor and organize the downtown. Really, it's the investment on King Street and West Spring Street. These are your two main corridors and one of your key assets. You also have some of your great civic anchors that organize some of your spaces and bring folks to the community. You've got your library, the city hall, you've got the historic chapel, and then, of course, the businesses in the Market Village. You also have amazing green spaces that you've recently invested on that already serve a great purpose in bringing people downtown. Your investments in the Village Green, the great kind of tranquility of Memorial Cemetery, some of the green spaces that are scattered throughout downtown. All this comes together and is connected through what we're calling the Jonquil Mile, which is the line that you see in orange moving through downtown. We see the investment in the Jonquil Mile, something that goes through King Street, through the heart of the redevelopment, goes up Memorial Place, right by Memorial Cemetery, and then goes through West Spring Street to the Market Village, connecting the site to the Market Village, and then goes up on King Street toward the Village Green and connects the pond and the Arboretum back to the site. This is a connective tissue that will bring all of downtown together. So the vision for the site is a kind of a nexus of all of these ideas come together. It's a mixed-use spine on King Street. It's the idea of bringing the Jonquil Mile through downtown, anchoring redevelopment around the chapel through a new chapel green that's connected to the historic chapel. All in all, the massing that you see here is conceptual. This is your starting point for you all to engage with the development community. And what we're showing here represents a site redevelopment that will add about 350 new homes to downtown, about 8 to 12 businesses, a food hall with about 4 to 6 restaurants, and a hotel at the corner of Church and Atlanta, near the corner of Church and Atlanta, that has about 120 rooms. So I know this is quite a big graphic to start with, so I'm gonna break it down into some smaller areas and talk a little bit about what they mean. However, I know that one of the key things that you all want to know and the community told us about is housing. So one of the things that, when we talk about 350 new homes, I want to be very clear that this is a mix of for sale residential and opportunities for rent as well. So we're showing massing that includes some townhomes, some flats, as well as some multifamily apartments. And the reason for this is the development strength that you all have here in the region to attract some of these uses. You have really great comparable rents in the area that are supporting one-bedroom units for $1,800 or two-bedroom units for $2,100. You've got really healthy housing ecosystems supporting single-family homes or townhomes between $415,000 to $500,000. So really, great comps that will signal to the development community there's a lot of opportunity. 350 homes might sound like quite a big number, and the grand scheme of things, as you look at other developments in Smyrna, it's actually quite similar to other concepts, of course, at a density more suitable for downtown. The Sink Apartments at Jonquil, that's to about 290 multifamily units, and the Belmont development is about 274 multifamily units, and then 215 single-family homes. So this is not an unprecedented amount of residential to add to downtown, to Smyrna, but it is a significant investment in the downtown that will bring a lot of new activity. Like I said, all of this is centered around the historic chapel. The chapel in our own assessment, in talking to the community, this is the heart of any future redevelopment. The way we envision redevelopment happening is really opening up the area around the chapel and then focusing redevelopment around a new chapel green that really highlights this historic structure, opens it up with a glassy or contemporary addition, and really becomes more of a front lawn for the redevelopment, brings about an acre of green space. And then you can have things like mixed-use buildings with parking behind them, perhaps an event space connected to a hotel. All of these things kind of centered around this new investment in green space. What that could look like, this can take a variety of different forms. Today, if we're going down Church Street, you've got the frontage of the 1962 portion of the building. You've got the monument sign. This is looking toward Atlanta Road, so you've got a sidewalk. And really some good tree canopy, but a little bit of an uninspiring procession through downtown. As we think through how this can be reimagined, our vision for this area is really opening up this portion of downtown, making it a southernmost gateway for your downtown, honoring that historic architecture with a contemporary addition that really brings light and energy into the site, perhaps adding things like a coffee shop or a visitor center or some sort of business that brings a little bit of life and activity to that green. And then having redevelopment allow to front that green, to bring eyes on that space and have the Jonquil Mile kind of connect right through that green space as well. The other main element of the concept is King Street. So like I said, King Street is one of your key corridors for downtown. It is that north-south corridor that really connects all of your key assets, all of your city hall, the library, the village green. It brings that all together. So we see King Street as this really fantastic opportunity to make it a walkable, vibrant corridor and really support the businesses that are already on King Street and then bring that energy south toward the redevelopment site. Things like a new food hall kind of facing King Street, mixed-use buildings on both sides of the street, the historic chapel and green space addition, and then having the investment of the Jonquil Mile on King Street itself. And King Street today is a really great connector, but it's not living up to this opportunity. Despite being one of the only north-south corridors that are walkable through downtown, the walking experience on King Street is a little bit lacking today. You've got a good sidewalk, you've got some tree canopy, but you don't have consistent sidewalks on both sides of the street. Luckily, in the image here, we're showing the First Baptist Church on the left and then the parking lot on the right. You control both sides of the street. So this gives you a lot of leeway into how you influence development here and then what types of investment you can do. So if we were to rethink King Street with the investment of the Jonquil Mile, mixed use retail on both sides of the street, what that can look like is a completely different corridor that really highlights more of what Smyrna can be. So, a really generous 12 to 15-foot path with landscaped edges on both sides of the street, really great tree canopies, of course, jonquils, because of course, and then great signage, wayfinding, lighting, opportunities for businesses to front kind of ground level retail, that great tenanting mix that we talked about, and then having balconies and residential on both sides of the street, creating eyes on the street and making a little bit more of an active corridor. So mixed use is great, as a planner, of course, we appreciate that, but we also have to acknowledge that downtown is in the middle of a residential area and it's surrounded by residential. We heard a lot from the community that they wanted to make sure that any future redevelopment doesn't feel like an intrusion of multifamily or an intrusion of density in the surroundings. They wanted a blend that really gradually built up to the density. So one of the things that we do in our concept is to show kind of that gradual density as we move into the single-family neighborhoods surrounding downtown. So if you look at the graphic, you see some townhomes or some flats facing Stevens Street or Reed Street, a little bit of a green space in between any multifamily and the townhome frontages. And it's really to create that gradual blend into the existing residential character of the areas around downtown and really bring some of that neighborhood feel to that edge and bring it that high quality architecture. And I do want to be kind of very clear about the fact that people expect high quality architecture from this development. This is a pivotal redevelopment for you all, and as such, it needs to look and feel like a high quality redevelopment. People told us that they'd like to see a balance of for sale and for rent housing. Like I mentioned, something that does include apartments, but crucially, the opportunity for townhomes, condominiums, things that the community wants you all to work with the development, developers later on in the process to figure out a good mix. But all in all, people told us that they are more comfortable with density, more comfortable with change, if the quality of architecture matches that of what is currently in downtown and kind of hits the moment for what downtown can be. So I'm going to pause for a little bit and talk about what folks told us about this concept, and then we'll talk a little bit more about connectivity and mobility. But in our third community meeting, we talked with 150 Smyrna residents, and they gave us feedback on what they liked about the concept, how we can continue to change or improve it, and then we asked them to rank it from 1 to 10 on how closely it matched their vision for the site. What people liked about the concept, there was actually quite a bit. So people told us they liked the walkability of it, that they really enjoyed the Jonquil Mile and the connectivity, the green spaces in particular. There's a lot of support for the plazas and open spaces. The concept that had a mix of uses, especially since it had retail and dining as a key element, people really enjoyed that. People really liked the idea of a food hall or an event center. The fact that there were a lot of different uses and there was not a single use development, and a ton of support for the chapel being the highlight of the redevelopment and the chapel addition. However, with any type of redevelopment, you are going to have some apprehension for change. And there's going to be some challenges that you all will work with a development partner to overcome. People are somewhat uneasy with the density of residential, especially since this is a new addition to downtown. There's some concerns of how this addition can impact traffic. People are concerned that this will impact their ability to access downtown. People told us that they like to see more mixed-use elements. Even if you have things like a hotel, they'd like to continue to have ground-level retail. And of course, people really like the green spaces, and they would like to see more green spaces. And I have a little bit of to show on that here in a minute, too. And of course, parking and accessibility, the location of parking, these will continue to be concerns and things that you all have the power and the ability to negotiate with the development community to make sure these are well designed so they are complementary to the downtown and don't overwhelm your transportation network. When we asked folks what they thought about the preferred concept on the ranking from 1 to 10, originally we asked this in our second public meeting when we had 3 concepts, and those ranked about 4 or 5 out of 10. We were really glad to see that the preferred concept ranked significantly higher at 7 out of 10, which is a really positive thing to see as part of a process like this. We also asked folks what they thought about King Street. People told us that they loved the walkability, the outdoor dining, the Jonquil Mile. On things that they'd like to see improved, they told us that they'd like to see more of what's already there, so more bike parking, more space for outdoor pop-ups or dining. And then there are still some concerns about how does this work during rush hour, and there's some design elements that you all can consider, but of course, King Street is not meant to be an arterial road. It's a kind of a low-stress street for walking and biking through your downtown. And connectivity is something that we'll continue to hear about, and this is a conceptual design, but this is something that we want to make sure, as you all work with a developer, to ensure that you continue to see this site as an extension of your downtown and something that remains well connected. And you do this by creating internal streets, by creating alleys, by placing your parking so it has multiple access points, and by continuing what is a great strength of your downtown, which is the fact that it has such a great interconnected street grid. I mentioned green space a couple of slides ago, and one of the things that people really liked about the concept was the green space. And one of the key plays in connectivity is having a system of green spaces that connect folks from your Market Village down to the Village Green. The Chapel Green, like I said, is 1 acre, but overall, we're actually creating about 2 new acres of green space through this site redevelopment. Compared to the Village Green, that's about 3 acres. We're about 2/3 there. However, we're breaking it up into smaller pieces because these are smaller, more intimate greens. You already have the big event lawn that you can host your big events. You already have your landmark green space. The purpose of these green spaces is to create more intimate neighborhood moments, places where you can work with a development community to have your development create great little courtyards, pocket parks, neighborhood greens, things that feel special and unique. And all of this works together in what we think is an improvement to your downtown circulation, both for walking and for driving. So as you consider redevelopment, one of the key strengths in your downtown is that it already has a connected street grid. You have streets that go through, what you want to maintain is a street grid where you don't put all of your inbound and outbound trips to one single road. So you don't want to have a super block type of development and you funnel all your traffic to Atlanta Road. You want to make sure you have internal streets and internal alleys that connect folks from Concord and Atlanta down to, through your redevelopment and well-placed through to your parking structures. Parking, as we see it, has to be accessible from 2 different locations, has to be visible but screened so it doesn't feel like you're just driving through a parking district. I don't know about you all, but when I visit a great place, I don't really remember how easy it was to park. I remember how great the space was, but I do remember if it was really tough to park. There's a little bit of a balance. But the main element here in a mixed-use development is the fact that, it's not encouraging you to drive, it's encouraging you to walk. And that's one of the key drivers here in our concept is the idea of the Jonquil Mile, the fact that you're having a mix of uses. And all of this is to encourage folks, if they're driving, to drive and park once and then walk through your entire downtown. And you can do that if it's a good environment. Feasibly, if you come in and visit the site, you could park in one of the parking garages here, and it is a 5-minute walk to the Village Green. Similarly, if you're parked northern on downtown, 5-minute walk. What doesn't encourage that walking is if you have a poor pedestrian experience where that's not an intuitive walk, or if the walking experience is not great. If you do have a great mixed-use development, you can see that about 30% of anticipated trips can be non-motorized because you've got residents, you've got office visitors, you've got visitors from on the hotel. All of those folks won't necessarily need to drive in to access some of these businesses as well. Lastly, I do want to talk about a couple of your key streets that you want to make sure you invest on, one of which is Church Street. As an east-west connector toward Atlanta Road, Church Street will see a lot of infill development with the site, and it will also see potentially some stress in your transportation, especially as you get closer to the intersection with Atlanta Road. You want to consider some of this traffic, and you want to continue to have a great walkable Church Street, to take some of those elements on King Street that I mentioned and make sure they're incorporated along Church Street so it continues to feel like a walkable road and not like a southern edge. You don't want your downtown to end at Church Street. You want it to feel like it's a great connector. And lastly, from the very first meeting, people told us about not having an old downtown and a new downtown. The easiest way to feel like you have a dated or an old portion of downtown is by not investing in some of your more mature portions of the district. And that is really West Spring Street. You have a really great corridor with restaurants, businesses, and people who have been there quite a bit of time. How do we make the West Spring Street feel like it's better connected to the new investments on the south? And it's really, there's an opportunity here to refresh the streetscape, bring a little bit more life. Our understanding is that some of the streetscape is actually toward the end of its lifespan, so you'll have to invest in the streetscape soon regardless. And there is a real opportunity here to make it a more usable space, both for events and for daily use. As we were chatting with folks as part of this process, they told us that it feels unsafe, especially with kids playing in the median. There's not enough space on the sidewalks. With cars moving through, there's a real opportunity to make it feel like a better street and still had more safety. Our vision for West Spring Street narrows that median from 22 feet to 4 feet. You can still have a great landscape middle with some lighting and signage, some great landscaping, and then you take that excess distance and you apply it to both sides of the street, and you expand the sidewalks on both sides, and perhaps bring some of the character of the Jonquil Mile through the heart of West Spring Street and make it feel connected to the investments happening elsewhere on the site. When we shared this with folks, they really enjoyed this vision for West Spring Street. People told us that they liked the idea of having more outdoor dining, revamping Market Village, having wider sidewalks. We did hear comments about pedestrianizing West Spring Street. Ultimately, in our own expertise, we think that actually will be detrimental to some of the operations on West Spring Street. You do have businesses that depend on road access on West Spring Street for their servicing. There's no alleys there. So this solution really allows you to keep things like on-street parking, outdoor dining, and still have the street function for the businesses that are there. Folks told us that it very much matched their vision for the site, for the corridor, about 8 out of 10. So we heard quite a bit from the community through this process. Toward the end of the third phase, some of the things that I want to leave you all with as you all move toward working with a development partner is, one, retail and restaurants. That is crucial. We heard this over and over again. Folks really want to see that type of uses in the redevelopment. Number two, housing and having a balance of housing. People really want you all to work with the development community to have for sale products and for rent products as a balance. Three, traffic and parking. That will continue to be a concern. That's something that you all can ensure is well designed so it doesn't overwhelm your transportation. And fourth, people really want to see investments like the Jonquil Mile and the green spaces as part of this. This is what brings life and character to the development, so it doesn't feel like it's generic or could be anywhere in the metro area. This is something that will really make it feel like it's only here in Smyrna. So with all the inspiration, I do have to leave you with a little bit of an action plan to bring the inspiration and make it a reality. So the last few pages in the plan are what we're calling the action plan. This is your implementation section. It is a little drier than the rest of the plan. There's more words, but this is really important for us and for you all to take this vision into, make it a reality. So one of the first things that we are recommending is for you all to work with a development community to select a development partner. This can look in many ways. The way that we are recommending it is through an RFQ, an RFP process, a request for qualifications, followed by a request for proposals. This is a process where you issue an RFQ to find qualified developers that have shown the experience and kind of that proven track record of doing this type of development. And then from a narrower list, you issue a single RFP to those shortlisted development partners to give you their vision for the site. We have been very forthright through this process that with the community that the development that one day will happen on the site will not look exactly like what's on these concepts. In fact, we expect it. The developer will come in with their own quals, they'll come in with their own vision. Your job as council, as city staff, is to align these two into a vision that fulfills those community priorities that we heard through this process. And these are incredibly important as you think through an RFQ and RFP. You want to make sure that these are incorporated into the scoring or how you pick and evaluate development partners. And that's prioritizing local businesses, providing a mix of businesses, having high quality architecture and public facing facades, having a mix of residential product types and different residential scales, having a development that includes for sale and for rent products, and then ensuring that a meaningful amount of green space feels open and welcoming. It's really important that you don't end up with things like interior courtyards that are only accessible for residents. You want to make sure that the design feels like you have all of these great little spaces that are to the public benefit of Smyrna residents and visitors to downtown. And the action plan to accomplish all of these things has 4 parts. I'll go through each one at a time. The first one is to establish design and community expectations. These are the kind of the nerdy planning things that you all can do right away to help set the tone for the redevelopment. Things like updating your urban design standards, adopting design guidelines for the site, aligning the site's zoning, which is representative of the development that used to be and not representative of the development that you want there, to make sure that that is up to date. And through it, the process, maintaining a transparent and open communication with the community, because you've built this plan and this vision on this foundation of engagement. You want to continue that. And one of the ways to do that is through your advisory committee, which we've met with 4 times and have been briefed throughout this process. Work with your project champions. All of these folks will be really crucial to ensuring that there's not just momentum, but support for this plan moving forward. The second element is to advance your public realm and infrastructure readiness. So, we've shown you a conceptual alignment for the John Cole Mile. You can, work with design firms to confirm that alignment, kind of refine your visions for King Street, West Spring Street, and the Chapel Green. Identify some, public realm improvements you can get to work right away. Kind of look at mobility and safety upgrades on your key corridors. I'm thinking, intersections with Atlanta Road. And then assess your utility and infrastructure to make sure that any future redevelopment, you are well informed on the needs of any future redevelopment for the site. The last 2 implementation action items are really development focused. So first, prepare that solicitation, like I mentioned, through the RFQ and RFP process. Before you do that, and this is something that city staff is already doing, it's share that redevelopment vision. You are not in a procurement process. You can openly talk to the development community and get feedback right away. In fact, they are calling, as I am aware, and they're even calling me in some instances to learn information. So, use this to your benefit. You can also retain a real estate advisory firm to act as your representative and guide you through the solicitation process. And then you issue your RFQ, your RFP, and then you work with your partners to select that development partner. And after you selected a development partner, you want to collaborate with that developer to turn that vision into long-term redevelopment. So first, establish a clear partnership through an MOU. Coordinate, the delivery of public realm elements that we've discussed. What should come first for a phased-in development. Work with the developer to ensure the mix of housing types that you all want and expect and will be feasible for that developer. And then, as you work through a development process, think through what incentives, what things you can do to support local businesses and community-serving businesses to be part of the redevelopment mix. And lastly, longer term, define some of the responsibilities for maintenance, programming, and activation of your open spaces. You all know how expensive it can be to maintain your green spaces, your streets, your alleys to the level of care and quality that residents expect. You can work with a developer earlier on to understand what is your role as a city and what is their role as a developer in the ongoing maintenance of some of these spaces, some of which might be public and some of which might be privately owned, but operate in a public manner. All of this is organized in an implementation matrix. It sets out the recommendation, our suggested timeline for it between a short term, which is less than a year, a medium term, 1 to 3 years, and a longer term of 3 to 5 years. And then kind of a lead, the city department to lead some of these efforts, and then partners within the city to help support that effort. You see here, the implementation matrix for collaborating with a selected developer. It shows, everything itemized, including things like, working to get retail tenanting strategies, working with a developer to ensure a mix of housing, things that are important to you all. So with that, I would love to open it for discussion and thank you all for being such great partners through this process and with the community.
Thank you. You've done incredible work. We're so happy that you were the one chosen to do this, because it's been a great process all the way, and I think what we've come up with is something that the citizens can be proud of, and as kind of like you said, it's going to change, but a really good starting point for what's possible, expanding the downtown. Mr. Lindley, anything you want to add?
No, I know we've got some folks here that have worked hand in hand with the city, but a huge thank you to Luis. Your leadership is much appreciated, and I think it has been crucial to guiding the public comment and engagement to a concept here tonight that truly starts the process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Welch?
Yeah, very quickly, and you really don't have to answer this question.
Sure.
You can get with Andrea, and she can give me the feedback. But in the RFP process,
Mm-hmm.
an RFQ, RFP, however
Sure.
we go about that, we're going to be asking these groups to put together real detailed presentations, I'm assuming, with a heavy cost. I mean, there may be $30,000 worth of preliminary work to go into this. Are we considering some type of reimbursement or payment for this? Or, and you, Andrew, you don't have to answer it right now if y'all don't have it, but I'm just curious about that.
I'm happy to start the answer, but that is one of the benefits of doing an RFQ and a process first and followed by an RFP. The RFP process, like you said, is a costly, time-consuming endeavor, especially if you have things that you want to see, like their vision for the site. The benefit of doing the RFQ first is that they only have to prove that they have the experience, the qualifications, and that they are willing partners. So then you narrow it down. Ideally, in an RFQ process, you narrow it down to 3 to 5 developers. That way, they're already invested and more willing to do that in time-consuming and costly endeavor of putting an RFP together. There is significant interest in this process already, so it is something that you will expect to see, quite a lot of development engagement. Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yes, so he answered the question about the RFQ, RFP, and what the advantage of that is. But to the point of significant interest, when we got a little news coverage on the third public meeting, the phone's been ringing off the hook with interested parties. And again, right now, the message to them is, we've been meeting with them, asking them, what would they like to see in an RFQ, RFP, so they will respond in a way that we want them to respond. But the number one thing I think folks have said so far is when they see the amount of public engagement and the amount of support that this plan has, that's what gets them excited. They've already passed one level of, complication, so to speak, to know what the community really wants to see.
Detail of the proposal that we're going to be asking. I hope we're going to be asking for these people to provide us with.
And that is one of the reasons that we recommend working with a real estate advisory firm to guide you through the RFP process and ensuring that you all are asking the right things and not asking things that are removing otherwise qualified developers. Of course, cities can do this without an owner's representative, a real estate advisory firm. You all have incredibly talented staff that could do this in-house. But if you do want guidance, there are experts there that will do developer outreach, things that you are already doing, and then will help you kind of figure out what are the terms to include in an RFQ or an RFP. Because I agree with you, you don't want to create a document or a process that's so onerous that you disencourage folks to participate in it.
The great thing, like you mentioned, we've got Andrea, who's been through this in Sandy Springs and is familiar, so we'll follow her lead and get a good process going. Remind us when the RFP is scheduled to, or RFQ, when does that process begin? Because like you said, there's a lot of people calling and meeting with a lot of folks and having discussions. Once that goes out, those stop, right? So when is that?
I would recommend that we look at that sometime later this year, mid-year. We've still got some work to do on the front end. Again, want to consider whether or not we want to hire someone to be on our side, so to speak, and representing our interests. So we've got further discussion before we want to open that up. But I would anticipate by the summer.
Any other questions or comments from council on this? Mr. Gould?
Just a thank you, Louis, and Andrew, of course, right, and Councilmember Lindley. Really appreciate your expertise, your guidance, and as we think about going forward, right, knowing the value of somebody who's been through this process before, right, to help us. Andrea has, of course, but the process that I've seen to be successful in the city is when we've had some expertise involved throughout that. So you're getting us to this point. It's been highly valuable, along with our community who's been engaged and some really talented folks on the committee too that lended their input. So thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And I would just like to state how fantastic city staff has been through this process. The engagement doesn't happen by itself. Andrea and Jennifer have really done a fantastic job getting folks to the meeting and making sure people know that this process has been happening.
Thank you. I'm going to go off script a little bit. We are going to vote on this on our first action item of the night. We're still under the presentations, and I know a lot of you have made an effort to be here tonight. If there is anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this or have any thoughts on this development, I know we've had a ton of public input already, but if you've got a thought that you'd like to share with us about it, this would be the appropriate time. Or if you even think you want to, come in and get sworn in by our city attorney. Don't need to be sworn in? All right, don't need to be sworn in. Okay, come on up. If you'll just state your name and address for the record for us, and be glad to hear what you have to say. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Marie Smith from 1215 Bank Street, and great proposal. It looks great. I'm really excited about it, but I'm hoping that the city would have learned our lesson on green trees for what we'll be able to keep for this one, because sales do not provide the shade that trees provide. So hopefully we'll look at keeping more of the trees for this development.
Good evening. I'm Sean Murphy, 3282 Lee Street. Really kind of a question. I don't think I heard it mentioned, but is there a chance that we will look at breaking this into pieces, or is it going to be considered all as one development done at one time? I'm just wondering what kind of thoughts have gone into, with like two potentially multifamily large pieces, is there a chance we would separate this into two pieces, or is it definitely going to be done as one?
Andrea, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't think we've determined that yet. Again,
think
that's
it
more
might be too
discussion,
early.
more phasing.
Yeah.
We've got some steps to go before we get there.
Okay.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Mr. Mitchell.
My name is Mike Mitchell. I live at 1181 Church Street, and I actually was one of the plan ambassadors. So I have been to all of these engagements and helped push the word about the survey, et cetera. And I just wanted to comment and thank Luis specifically for all of his hard work. It was really cool being part of that process and coming to the first town hall meeting. And we worked at action stations where people came and asked questions and got involved, et cetera. And then coming to the second meeting and seeing that those thoughts had actually been put into work and they had been exercised and they had been thought through and they had been evaluated. Oftentimes in our culture, government officials say, we talk to people and this is ultimately what was decided. In this case, it actually happened. The voices of Smyrna have been heard. It's going to be a headache. I live right off Church Street. It's going to be a headache, but it's going to be an amazing opportunity for us to showcase what this little city can do. So I just wanted to say thank you. I really, really appreciate it, and thank you specifically. It was great working with you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I've been in this process from the very beginning. I just want to say this is a great opportunity for the city of Smyrna to make this place a destination. And I appreciate the hard work. And for you too.
He didn't say his name and address, but he's on the committee. I bet we can find it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. I appreciate y'all being here. This is obviously something that is so important to this community, as evidenced by all the people who have come out, not only over the past several months, but also this evening for this vote. So we'll move on now then to our first action item under the community development items. This is item A, Resolution 2026-005, authorization for the approval to adopt the Smyrna Downtown Redevelopment Plan 2026 and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. I'll turn this over to Mr. Lindley for a motion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's sort of a monumental night, I think, for our great city, is one of the first major steps to a new era and a new age. As we've said many times over the last several years, this was a unique opportunity to set the course for an enormous expansion of our downtown, and to that end, we have a concept that will set the course, I believe, for the next 50 to 100 years. So a moment truly for history, hopefully, and hopefully developers will continue to call Andrea and the team. It has been noted, but I think it is worth stating again as we move into the motion process, but over the last year, Smyrna has engaged, quite frankly, like it never has before, with over 17,000 residents engaging in public comment. It is indeed historic, and Smyrna's residents have spoken, and their voices have been heard, and the plan and the concept reflect that. And to those of you here tonight that were part of the process, thank you, and a huge thank you to the 17,000 residents who stepped up and were part of the process and really guided this effort. As with many recent projects, the concept reflects public engagement, and to thank you to Mike Mitchell, one of our ambassadors. He hit it on the head. This, unlike any other project in recent Smyrna history, really was driven solely by public engagement. There were no parameters placed on it other than it would be redeveloped. So to that end, a great concept has been derived directly by our residents, and I think as a government, I know I'm proud of it, and I suspect all of the members before you are. A huge thank you to Andrea Worthy and her team, and to Jennifer Bennett for their tireless work, and to our entire city staff. We, as a city, have much to be proud of with the outcome of this concept before us tonight. And again, I hope it is the first of many big newsworthy items on this issue. Thank you to MKSK and their team. It has been a great working partnership, and a huge thanks to Luis Calvo. I think he thinks his work here may be done, but we'll see about that. Luis, your leadership has been much appreciated. To the next two groups that I wanted to recognize, a huge thank you to the Downtown Redevelopment Committee. The committee has worked very hard, been very generous with their time and energy, revisited many cities throughout Metro Atlanta. There's some irony. Some of the cities at one point, about 30 years, copied Smyrna, and now it's come full circle where we're going back to look at some of their successes. So a lot of what we learned has been incorporated in the final concept. And I would like to ask any members of the committee if you would please rise and be recognized for your work and effort and time. Thank you all. I also want to thank the ambassadors, as Mike Mitchell, and I see a number of them out there. We had truly a groundswell of folks that wanted to be part of this process, and like with all other parts of it, wanted to incorporate them in those efforts, and they really helped drive energy at all of our city functions. And I know most of us were very pleasantly surprised at the very first meeting to walk into our large gym and see it largely full. With folks that were excited about what we were talking about. And with that, I would like any of our ambassadors to please rise and be recognized as well. I know Mike Mitchell, Toby, I know, there you go. Thank you all. And again, Mr. Mayor, I am excited about the opportunity. Councilmember Welch and I were commenting, 3 to 5 years takes us well into the future. And then, of course, the finished product hopefully will be before the city and sort of stand the test of time. I think certainly it's going to be hard for anybody to argue we did not listen to the residents of Smyrna. So very proud of where we are tonight, and at the appropriate time, I will motion do pass.
Second.
I think it's the appropriate time. We have a motion do pass, second by Mr. Welch. All those in favor, please vote. Do we still have Ms. Hines with us?
Yes, and I vote in the affirmative.
Voting in the affirmative. Now it's like getting on 2, 3 in the morning in Milan, Italy. Thank you, Ms. Hines. And that passes unanimously. That is... Thank you all again for being here for this. I was going back and forth with Scott just a minute ago and getting a little bit nostalgic because, we we wanted to, 6, 7 years ago, when I spoke to so many of you, all you wanted was more people downtown, more energy, more restaurants, more retail. And so we did the green space, and that's been a huge success, and a ton of people are down there every day. And then I got a phone call from Pastor Pennington who said, would you have lunch with me? And we went and had lunch in that back room of Atkins, and he said, I think the church might be moving. Would y'all entertain talking about that? And so in that back room of Atkins, that you were in that room for many, many of those, for about 18 months, we talked about it and just slowly worked on a deal. And the fact that we're here now with this plan in front of us is it's pretty unbelievable. So I'm really excited what's ahead for our city. And when we're talking about those discussions that those developers have been having with us, y'all wouldn't believe, I'm not going to say it publicly because then if it doesn't happen, well, then you're going to come get me. But there are some really good restaurants that you all know that are excited about the potential opportunity to come down to downtown Smyrna. And I'm excited about that too. So thank you all again for all of your hard work. And thank you, Mr. Lindley, for your dedication to this. All right. And this is the part to say, if you were here for the downtown, we got a little more business, and you don't have to stay. And we're not going to think you're rude if you go back to your families. So thank you all for being here. And it doesn't look like there was a lot of people here for the rest of the agenda, but that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, Travis is even taking off with y'all. We'll give him a minute to come back.